It's another day, day after the second coat went on the deck. So that's what we're looking at the moment. It's gone very grey. When I walked out this morning, sort of first instincts said to me, "Oh, that's not the way it's meant to be. It looks more like it's been painted than stained." But the more I've been looking at it, the more comfortable I'm getting with the fact that it is what it is. Yeah, I don't know. I have to say it's not what I expected. It looks a lot different to what's on the Cabot's website, but it's too late now. It'd be almost impossible to get this stain out of the timber now, so I'm stuck with it, and I'll just have to get used to it. So I will put the third coat on, but I can't do it today. We got a bit of wind today, and it's blowing a little bit of debris and stuff onto the deck, so I'll need to give this a good brushing down or blow down with the compressor before I put a third coat on it. So I'm gonna wait till tomorrow. Hopefully there's no wind, and then I can put that third coat on. I've still got a wet patch here in the middle. There was a bit of deterioration in that section of timber, so I went really thick on the stain there to just try and seal that little section, and that is still actually a little bit damp because of the amount of stain I put on it. So we're going to leave the deck for today. I'm not going to do any more with it. I'm just going to sort of let my mind sort of stew over it and come to terms with how it's turned out. It looks clean. Like my father popped down and had a look at it, and he said, it's different to see a deck that's not stained natural, that's done in a different colour. He said from that perspective it's good. There won't be another one like it. But yeah, it is what it is. So what I've decided to do today is make a start on the sliding gate. Again, it's probably going to be a bit too windy for welding up frames. Probably going to lose a lot of gas. So all I've done is just a mock-up trial of the tracking system here. I have to cut a very short piece off the end there, probably about 400mm. Now normally with the stopper you would mount the stopper behind the track, but I need the gate basically to go all the way back to the wall so it doesn't stick out past the wall here. I need it to come back flush, and in order to do that the gate has to come right to the brick wall. So what I'm going to do off the frame here is I'm just going to weld a little tab off the side, so the stopper will still be there. The gate will still go back into this section, but yeah, it's just not mounted in the traditional way, behind the directly behind the track. So that'll still work. I know my track's not too straight. I've just sort of laid it out temporarily, and got my post there. Now I sort of cocked up here a bit with the dimensions of the base plate for the post. I went 100 by 100 square, and I probably didn't leave myself enough to dynabolt this down to the concrete. But what I think will be okay is moving it to the outer edges here on the front and the back side, and dynabolting it in through here, here, and here. I think that'll be enough to hold it, and if I need any more reinforcement I can just put a small bracket from here to here. I don't think it'll move. So that's the basic idea. One other thing I've discovered is that they show you the measurements of the caster wheels on the eBay listing, and they said that the wheel itself was 20 mil. Well, it's not actually 20 mil. It's larger than 20 mil. The groove is 20 mil, but they don't allow for the flange here. So using 25mm tube, my caster wheel is going to be too wide to cut into the tube. So really I needed to go maybe 30mm tube. So what I'm going to do, as you can see there, it's running right along the edge. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to make some spaces to go under here, and I'm just going to bolt it in above. I'm not going to bother cutting out the tube. You know, it doesn't matter really how high this sits, because it's going to have cladding on the front, so the cladding will come down over the wheels anyway. You won't see them. This is the guide. So the guide for the gate will mount up here on the wall, and the last bit we've got is this big bulky thing, which is nice for this post. It's sort of nice, it's a good width for that post, but my gate's only 25mm wide plus the width of the cladding, so it's extremely wide. Whether I'll use this or not, I don't know. I may even modify this and section it to reduce the width of it. If I'm not going to use it, I might as well have a crack at narrowing it, because then I might be able to use it. But as it stands, yeah, it's just going to be way too wide. Even with cladding on it, it's still way too wide. So it doesn't really work good as a locating position. Now, from what I understand, these tracks don't need to be dyno bolted down. You can actually use these. So drill into the concrete, and you put them down into the hole and just bash away. Now that's what I've been told to use. So I hope they're right. And that's about as far as we've got so far. So I'll leave it here and start working on that track system and see if I can get all that drilled out and put in place today. And maybe with the upright post, I will bring that into the garage and weld it in there where there's no wind, and I might be able to get that bolted into as well today. So we'll see how we go, see how time goes. Doing something a little different today. The deck's sort of on hold at the moment because I've actually contacted the manufacturer of the stain, and I've asked them if they can send out a sales representative when they're in the area, because we have lots of stores around here that they supply to. Ask them to come out and actually grab the 1.5 litre that I have left of the Cabot stain and see if they can actually take that back to their testing facility and actually check to see whether it's been mixed properly by the store I bought it from, because the deck is nothing like the samples. It's a completely different colour range altogether. So, you know, it's not even we're not even talking shades difference, we're talking colour difference completely. It's ruined the deck. It would take forever to sand that out of there, and it'd probably be quicker just to replace all the boards. So I'm waiting on a response from them, so I'm not going to do no more on the deck. If the rep's here, or the rep comes out to pick up the stain I've got left, they can personally have a look at the deck themselves, and they'll know that it's not what it's supposed to be. So anyway, what we're doing now is we've moved on to building the sliding gate. And as you know from the previous video, I sort of laid all the tracks out to get a bit of an idea of length and stuff like that. And I did make one cut to one piece of track, and had to shorten it up because it wasn't quite. I had 8 meters of track, and I think the gate's 3.9, so that works out at 7.8. So I had to take about 200 mil off one of the pieces of track. And one of the other things I did was I went to set up the main post that the gate closes against, and I sort of realised that when I ordered the base plate for it, I've actually ordered it too short. So I've had to sort of come up with an alternative way of putting this plate onto the bottom of this post and still be able to get bolts in it. So what I've chose to do is push the post to the edge of the plate, so it'll still get welded around all 4 sides, and then I can put these anchor screws in. I only need 3. 3 will be enough to hold this because this isn't structural in any means. It's simply there just to stop the gate. It's not bearing any load. As I said, if I really wanted to, off the top of the post, I can always put a tab and screw that into my neighbour's garage wall. That's been done before with a set of gates that I had on there, so he's got no issues with me just putting an anchor bolt or a dyno bolt into the brickwork. So that's alright. I did make one mistake though, but I was able to rectify it. Now, stupid me, I was tired when I got up, but I needed to get a start. I needed to get motivated, and I come out and I thought, okay, I marked crosses on this yesterday where I thought the anchor bolts would go, but rather than doing it the right way, I did it the wrong way. I should have measured the width of that, found the center punched those holes, and then drilled it. And that would have given me my true center. And then what I should have done is then dropped one of the anchor bolts in to make sure that we were going to clear the post. Well, I got a little bit close on these 2 corner ones. I should have maybe brought the hole out, I don't know, maybe 2 mil, if that. Like, it's nothing. It's really nothing. So all I've done is just off the flange here, I just put it on my linisher, and I just linished it down a slight bit just to clear the post. A socket will still go on. I'll just put this camera down for a second, guys. So, you know, these are things not to do. This is why I point out my mistakes. But this one, as you can see, it's fairly close to the line, but it's getting a socket on the head that's more important. So that will clear. And if I wanted to, these are actually a 10 mil bolt, but you have to go 12 mil hole because of the thread. So if I really wanted to, I could take that hole out to 13 mil, and I would gain that extra mil or so to move it closer to the edge. But I don't think it's going to be a problem. This corner one, absolutely tons of room, so I can run a standard non-ground bolt there. And then this one here is the same. I've still got like 1/2 mil clearance, and you have to remember that that Sharpie line is on the outside of the post, so the post sits inside that, so it should be right. But yeah, that's what not to do. Don't guess, do it properly. Get your tape measure out or your square and measure it up and do it properly. Don't take shortcuts. It's just not worth it. because you end up having then to modify other things or having to make bigger holes in your plate. And if you can keep them nice and tight, a nice tight firm fit, it's just going to bolt down to the ground better, you know. You're not going to have play in it. So anyway, the job to do now is obviously I have to take this galvanized coating off the plate, and then what will happen is, and the post of course, so what will happen is this will get welded onto the plate like that. And if I grab one of these and I put this in, as you can see, there's no problem now. I've got clearance, it turns, it's not binding. So I'm gonna finish this post off today. I'm trying to do things in the garage because the weather is absolutely horrible here in Melbourne. It is freezing cold and it's been raining. It's not raining at the moment, but I can't take the welder out there, and I can't weld under my carport because being on a sloping block, all the water runs down the driveway and it runs under the carport into the sump drain. So all the concrete's wet there. So I really don't have a dry spot to be able to set the frame up for the gate and weld away. In here I can't do it because I've got the issues with the gutter. And as you can see, we did get a little bit of water in here overnight, which has run off here. We still have no water coming under the front door, which is absolutely fantastic. That strip of rubber worked beautifully. So all this wet patch here is actually what's come from here and run across the concrete. There must be just a valley there. It obviously takes off that way. There must be a high spot here from when they've leveled the concrete. That's why that never gets wet, but it finds the low path and it just runs out underneath the car. So it doesn't go all the way to the door though, it sort of stops midway. Okay guys, I've welded my plate on, so on this edge, you know, I can get a nice smooth finish here. I've just got one little bit there I just got to clean up a little bit. You get a nice smooth edge on that as well. And then these are the two sides that I'm not going to attempt to grind, simply because it's just getting into corners is just too difficult. So I'm just going to leave that. Like, I know it's not the greatest weld, but you know, I haven't done any welding for probably the last 5 months, so I'm a little out of touch. But you know, I've seen a lot worse. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. I haven't put a bolt in here yet, so let's grab a bolt. I was just a little bit worried about the weld and how the bolt head will sit, because I want it to sit as flush as I can. Okay, I might have to just nip a little bit out of there, and probably the same here, but the rest of the weld can remain as is, because I don't want to make it look any worse than it is. So I'll just have a little grind there and just try and flatten it out a little bit. I don't own a Dremel, but I do own a file, so I think this will work pretty damn good for what I want to do right there. I've got those sections ground down. As you can see, I didn't touch the majority of the weld. I've just ground down where I needed to. I'll clean it up really super nice and hit it with some gal, but I've got enough clearance now that the bolt heads sit completely flush on the plate, which is good. And yeah, it's turned out the way I wanted. It's another day, we're working on the gate. As you can see, we've got sort of moderate weather conditions today. We've had no rain, which is good. everything's still wet from yesterday, but you know, it's good enough to get out here and do some work on the gate. Now, it's been a day of corrections. So I originally wanted my gate to be 1800 high, and I ordered the materials for that to happen. So I ordered my post at 1800 as well, and then I ordered my sliding gate system. Now, I didn't expect the wheels to be as big as they were. From what I've seen on other people's gates, I've seen casters a third of the size. So I expected to get a little bit, maybe a little bit of height, but I also thought that I was going to be able to recess the caster wheel into the tube, which is how the caster wheel bracket is designed. So you cut a slot in the tube and part of the wheel goes up into the tube. So the caster wheels were advertised as being the width of the wheel 20 millimeters. So I went with 25 millimeter tubing. And as I said, I think in one of the previous videos, it is 20, but the groove is 20. They haven't allowed for the flanges on the outside of the wheel, so by the time you add in the flanges, the wheel comes to 25 millimeters, and my tube is 25 millimeters, so I can't recess it. So what I've got to do is I have to now weld another piece, or an offcut, of this 25 mil tube to this bottom tube, and then bolt up through the whole lot. So what has happened is I've had to reduce the size of the gate slightly. These casters are 90 mil, so if I had a gate height of 1800 and then a caster wheel of 90 mil, I'm going to end up with 1890, right? And it's a bit of an odd size, but if I could have recessed the top of this wheel into the tube, provided this was actually a true 20 mil, I would have been on 1880. So lots of measurements ended up getting changed after the steel was already ordered and pre-cut because of these caster wheels. This is sort of thrown a spanner in the works. So it took me a while today to try and work out, and it shouldn't because you've only got 3 sections, but I had to try and work out what the length of these support braces were going to be now. They obviously had to be shorter, and I had to cut 14 of them to make them fit, because I had to reduce the whole frame by 90 millimeters, which is the caster length. So I've done what I've had to do. I've cut down everything, and I've only had to take off, I can't tell you what it is. I haven't even measured it. I ended up taking the measurement off the longer piece, so I can't remember what the offcut is. But it wasn't a lot, but it was enough to be a pain in the ass. So now, as an overall height of the gate, I now have an even, just about an even 1900 mil. By the time I basically squash everything together and bring the caster up a bit more, we've got an even 1900. Now I can live with that, but the only issue that I have is that my post is 1800. So what I now have to do is order a piece of 75 by 75 by 2mm square hollow Duragel tube cut at 110mm tall, because obviously I have to allow for the cap, because I want the gate to sit hard up against the post, not be held out by a couple of mil here on the cap. So I want the cap to sit slightly higher. So I've got to order a piece that's about 110mm long, and then weld that to this in order for it to match our new gate height. That's fine, I can do that, no issues at all. I've just got to go down and pick it up. It comes to a whole $2.55, but I've got to drive 15 kilometers to go and get it, and then 15 kilometers back, and an hour of my time or something. So yeah, but at least now everything's worked out. I've chose to go with this staggered pattern. I haven't yet actually marked the true centers of each post. This is just a rough layout. Just grabbed the tape measure and did a rough, measurement between the posts, just to get a bit of an idea of what it was going to look like. I didn't want to run them all down in line. I wanted to sort of do this this brickwork bond type set out. I just think it's stronger. Not that I should get any bending, but I think if you run all your uprights on the same line, you probably could have a tendency for it to bend down that line, where by staggering every alternative brace, you add a little bit of strength to here, to that middle section, but you're still adding strength to this section, top and bottom. So I sort of like that idea, and it's sort of a little bit decorative as well. Even though this will have a cover on it, it'll still be seen from the rear. So I sort of like this bonded look. So yeah, I did make one other cock up as well. Now my father dropped in today, and I know he's 82 years old this year, so he's an old man. And old men tend to drive you crazy sometimes. So my old man is not mellow by any stretch of the imagination. He's go, just will ask you the same question 100 times, with good intentions, but he's a pain in the ass. We nickname him the Drainer. He just drains us so much. But anyway, he came down, which was good. I like to see him get out of the house. And I'd actually, to save time, which was stupid, but I'm sort of glad I did it in a way, because we've had so many alterations vertically. I really didn't expect many to be horizontal, because the gate has to be 3.9. Regardless what else happens on this, it has to be 3.9, because that's our opening. But I ordered all the horizontals at 3.9 rather than ordering these at 3.840. Sorry, 3.850. So, because you've got to allow the 25mm for the tube at each end. These two should have been 3.850, but the old man was here and he was sort of in my ear about things that didn't even have anything to do with the gate. And I've taken a measurement, and I got into my head, I knew that these were 3,900 millimeters, or 3.9 meters, and then I knew I had to take 50 mil off, which doesn't sound hard. You should get 3,850. But 3,9, I was thinking it was 3,990. So I took 50 mil off 3,990, which gave me 3,840. So it was 10 mil. I had this 90 stuck in my head. And I ended up cutting this one 10 mil too short. I realised me cock up straight away. So, as you can see, I didn't make the same mistake on that side. So I've had to cut a 10 mil piece here to graft back on. But I don't think it's going to be noticeable. It is so small and so close to the edge and will be up against the house wall. So it's not going to be seen. There'll be cladding or some sort of wooden feature on the front, so it's never going to be seen. But yeah, it's been a bit of a day of trials and tribulations, and I think I've sorted out all the problems. So the next thing I've got to do is, on all these horizontals, I've got to mark exactly where the center will be for each post, and then I've got to take to that with the grinder and grind the galvanized coating off it, so then I can weld it. I'm only choosing to weld on the insides for a couple of reasons. One, it's going to be quicker. Two, if any water gets in there, if I have an opening front and back, at least on the bottoms, water's going to escape. It's not going to get trapped in the tube. You know, maybe I should weld the top, because if you're going to get water in, it is going to get in through the top. But if it goes in and can come straight out, it doesn't matter. So I can reduce the amount of welding I've got to do, the amount of cleanup I've got to do, the amount of time I've got to spend welding around all four sides. I'm hoping tomorrow will be our welding day. I may just get the frame, the actual frame itself, sort of tacked together today, get it all squared up and tacked in, and then really attack the welding tomorrow, because tomorrow's going to be a perler of a day. It's going to be really good weather, low winds, but I have to make an early start because I've got to take my father for an appointment at 1 o'clock. I've got to buy a couple of plastic stoppers or end caps, whatever you would like to call them, for the tube, which is going to work nice as like a little buffer pad at each end of the gate, similar to what I did on the step legs. I didn't want metal sitting on concrete, so I bought those 40mm end caps and put them in before bolting the step down. So I've actually got plastic sitting on concrete rather than steel sitting on concrete. These are all the little offcuts from today's effort to get everything right. You know, they're almost the perfect size too to weld on there, but I think we'll go a bit more chunkier for the casters. So those two are okay, and then I've got that that spare vertical to then cut an additional two. These, I'll keep them. They always come in handy for something. Like, I didn't know I was going to need 10mm to extend that horizontal that I cut short. So, you know, as I've always said, keep your scrap. Keep your scrap. It won't take up much room, but it could be a very valuable thing. And one thing I realised today, when I went to cut this 25mm tube, the actual vise on my my drop saw won't close up to 25mm. So when that 25 goes in, and that is, oh, it's going to make a liar of me now. No, it's not. When that goes in there, what happens is the handle hits the frame. Very bad design. Very bad design. So what you have to do is you have to put a piece behind it in order to get your clearance. So things like that a trash to one man but treasure to another, so that's why I keep my stuff. Doesn't take up much room, and it could just be something that you need to get the job done. I kicked a couple of goals the other day. Had a really productive day. Was so happy when I went in that night. Couple of jobs that I've been meaning to do for many years, and had the things to do them, but just never got around to doing them. And that was to bolt down all my pedestals, with the exemption of the grinder one, because it's got a fairly thick plate on it. And my intentions for this is I've just fitted this wire wheel. I had 2 stones on there. I've just fitted a wire wheel, and what I want to do is I want to put a polishing wheel on this side, and I'm going to buy a bigger, more expensive grinder to put my stones on. So I'll actually end up having 2 bench grinders. This one will just be for polishing and wire wheeling, which is, you know, it's not a very powerful grinder. It's a Ryobi, but you know, I think this was bought for like a Christmas present one year from my family. I think it was like only like $90 or something. So it's just a cheap one, but it's been fantastic. It's never let me down. But yeah, so this will probably get mounted somewhere else, and the new grinder, the big grinder that I buy, will actually get mounted onto this pedestal. My linisher, that's all the pedestal's now fixed down. I used the same plugs that I used on the gate track. I thought I'll give them a try. Maybe they're not going to be strong enough, maybe they will. They're way strong enough. That's never going anywhere in a million years. Now, I had this old dust extraction unit which came with the linisher. The pedestal drill I bought years and years later. The linisher used to be attached to my workbench once upon a time, but then I got this for $20 off eBay and mounted it to this. And this dust extraction unit always sat in the shed, and always had intentions of getting it fixed onto this eventually, and I just never did it until the other day. Now I know it's working already because I can see some stuff that I've been grinding today, but I've yet to complete it. I've got the tube here, so the tube will go up and go on there, and then I've got a nice little bin coming that my sister has, and that's going to be basically our catchment container for all the debris. Had a lot of modification to do to this. Didn't know, like, I know I needed to get everything back, but I wanted to keep this as short as possible so the linisher didn't stick out here somewhere. So originally there was a tube coming off this, and then that had a sleeve on it, and then that sleeve would then accommodate this 90-degree elbow. So I had a bit of a play around. That's the sleeve that would have went halfway over that, and then the 90-degree would have then went into the other half of that. But yeah, because I didn't exactly know what length, I just had a crack at it. I was going to leave that much on the actual the wedged intake, and then weld the 90-degree to it. But what I ended up deciding to do in the end was taking that off as well, cutting the 90-degree back as far as I possibly could, leaving just enough room to slip the hose on, and I ground out the hole in this wedge, and I slipped this in and then welded right around, and that's reduced that's probably reduced it by that much, which is, I'm guessing, about somewhere between 150 to 200 mil, which is really good. So I'm very happy about that. It was a really good productive day. Just getting this mounted, getting that all modified and welded on, and same with the pedestal drill. Finally got my anchor bolts in, so I don't have to worry about this thing rotating and spinning on me. It was really funny because the concrete is not perfectly smooth there, and every time you would bump the pedestal drill, it'd like get this backward and forward rocking motion, where the rocking motion would just keep it rocking. It was just due to the weight and the balance and everything. So now I don't have any issues. That's all bolted down nice and strong. And one other thing I'm going to do is this cabinet that I got from work. I was going to put legs on it. I got the legs for nothing from work, so it didn't cost me anything. And I've currently got it sitting on my car creeper, my garage creeper. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put caster wheels on it, 2 with a brake and 2 just freewheelers, and I'm going to make a frame up to go on the top here, and then I'm going to make another frame that hinges and can be folded back over, and then when it's folded out it becomes double the width of the bench. And then I'm going to put some stainless steel on the top and have a mobile welding bench, which is something I've wanted forever. And I figured, why not use this for what I'm using it for currently, which is to store all my drill bits and grinders, grinder blades and everything else that I store in there. But use the top as a welding bench. Put it on casters so it's movable. I can wheel it out here and everything like that. Soon the roof will be fixed, so I'll be able to use all this area here. And so that's what I'm going to do. So that those 2 lengths of 1800 gal tube that I've got out there is going to be a start for this. Start for the frame at least. I've got that right angle out there as well, so I can use that for cross bracing, because I don't want the stainless steel to be sitting directly down on the top of this, because if I'm welding I don't want this to catch fire. So I want a bit of a an air space underneath, and that will obviously be 25 mil. So yeah, so I'm going to end up with a welding bench as well. So I've started to get all my little garage workshop tools all sorted. And another thing I'm going to do too is I always have trouble with my compressor moving. So in this stand here, I'm actually going to drill a couple of holes, and then I'm going to insert some pins into the concrete here that stick out of the concrete, and when I bring this back in, I'll just sit them down over the pins, and then this won't move. I've tried to use chocks under the wheels in the past, but this thing is just so it's so old school and it's so industrial. It just like vibrates like crazy, and those chocks just end up getting pushed along the floor basically. So I'm going to put some pins in there, and that will take care of this. They don't need to be threaded pins. They don't need to have any nuts put on them. Once they're inserted into that plate, this thing ain't going nowhere. I just wanted to show a little bit of what I'm doing in the way of setting up these caster wheels. As you can see there, if this was these 2 tubes were to be welded to the bottom horizontal bar, I've got enough clearance between the bar and the wheel. You need a little bit because you're going to pick up debris and stuff like that as you roll the wheel back and forth along the track. So, and then what I've done here is I've basically just eyed down and I've set my blocks level with the edge of the wheel, and I've just used a biro, and I've marked my hole centers, and what I'm going to do is now drill these out, and then these will actually get welded to the bottom horizontal bar. Another thing I needed to do on the deck, even though we've sort of come to a big screaming halt on the deck at the moment, is I've got this sag in the deck, and it tends to fill up with water because it's not tight. And the reason being is that this post here sits back too far compared to this post here. So I've got lots of this bar. There's a piece like an offcut, but I do have a quite a few lengths at 900. And what I did yesterday is I went down to the steel merchant and I bought a piece of 22mm solid stock. And basically what I'm going to do is pop the cap off that, stick this in, plug weld the solid stock into the tube on both tubes, which will bring the bar out level with the fence. That'll pull this corner over on more of an angle, and that should take the ripple out of the shade sail. Okay guys, I'm making the next lot of spacer blocks, so I'll show you. It's going to get noisy, be warned. Oh, as you can see, that's how I've had to pack it out. This is one of the other ones that I've cut. I've just drilled it. So I'll do the same with these two that I'm cutting now. Okay, that's it. I'm just going to follow the process for the second one, so no use filming that, and show what we got when we're finished.